For the last 4 years, the United States has not had a confirmed ambassador here in the Dominican Republic. And the reality of it is there was a person appointed to be the ambassador, but they didn't get through all the red tape of vetting and all that stuff. Some things popped up, I guess. So instead of an ambassador for the last few years, specifically under the Biden administration, the de facto ambassador to the Dominican Republic was something French named, like a sacre bleu, or a fleur de bleu, or a crunchy croissant. Something like that. Let me just look it up. Probably easier that way. Here we go. It's a chargé d'affaires ad interim. I don't even know about it. We'll put it here so you can read it. Now, for the United States, it was simply, hey, yeah, we intended to put an ambassador there. We're going through some political muck trying to get that person confirmed. No biggie, right? But for many in DR, the administration and many that just live here, it felt insulting, maybe even disrespectful. DR felt like it was low priority, like it wasn't an important relationship, like it was not getting the attention that it deserved. Just like my wife. Totally kidding. My wife is super cool. One of the most amazing people you'll ever meet. I'm only joking around when I do those little things about her. Did I do it good? Okay. All right, good. So then the signals shifted. Under the new administration, a new ambassador was appointed here to the Dominican Republic from the U.S. Her name is Leah Campos, and she was confirmed in 2025 as an actual U.S. ambassador. And for this administration, and this isn't anything partisan, just an analysis, there are 3 key countries to the Western Hemisphere plan that the U.S. has signaled. That is Mexico, because of the border, Panama, because of the canal, and Dominican Republic, because of its strategic location, political and economic stability, and aligned values in many ways, politically and culturally. So the ambassador appointment was important for this administration if they're going to signal to DR, hey, you are an important ally of ours in the region. Then you saw other signals publicly. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, came to the Dominican Republic on one of, if not the first diplomatic ventures he made outside of the country. Later on, when the U.S. was seeking logistical support militarily in the region for its operations that it was planning or may still plan, who knows, in Venezuela, they went to many countries in the region, but they only sent a cabinet member to one country, Dominican Republic. That was Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War or Secretary of Defense. And my understanding is that's the first time a Secretary of Defense has ever visited DR. So you've got like the third most powerful guy in the U.S. and Marco Rubio visiting early stage after the administration is elected. And then later on, I don't know, the 4th or 5th most powerful guy in the administration being Pete Hegseth, also making a visit to DR. In 2025, the Summit of the Americas was scheduled to happen here in Punta Cana. It got postponed. It will happen apparently sometime in 2026, and there's a lot of talk that Trump himself will attend that, which would mean the first ever sitting U.S. president will set foot on the Dominican Republic soil. So like any one of these things on their own doesn't mean much. But when you take them all together and look at how Dominicans felt about not having an ambassador and then the rapid assignment and multiple visits from the U.S. to Dominican Republic, there's signals there. They're showing the Dominican Republic that you are important to us for many reasons. That's rare earth minerals, defense, import-export, as a logistics hub. DR is a small but critical ally for the United States, who is working hard to re-embed the Monroe Doctrine, which essentially means, look, other parts of the world, we are the dominant power in the Western Hemisphere, hands off. This our turf right here. Some agree with it, some don't agree with it. Not here to litigate that. Just giving you the facts. Now, I was honored recently to sit down with that U.S. ambassador to the Dominican Republic, Leah Campos. And I'm not going to give you all details of the meeting. It was an informal sit down and we had a great discussion as human beings. And of course, we engaged one another on topics of interest relative to the Dominican Republic. But everything I'm talking about today is based on public signals, what you can see, what's actually happening. And just to be clear, I don't care who that ambassador is or if they were a fleur de bleu, a shibidi-boo, whatever the French thing was. I want you to spam the comments with, I love your French. I'm sorry if I'm insulting my French friends out there, but whoever appointed the person sitting in the ambassador chair, it means nothing to me. I'd be equally open to and excited to meet with any ambassador appointed by anybody. This isn't about politics, it's about dialogue and understanding. It's about building a relationship, and my interests, as well as any ambassador in a country, is strictly that country. In this case, the Dominican Republic. Bring on any ambassador, I'll have a chat with them. Look, the U.S. has a pretty clear mission. I think we can see it. They don't want China to have the kind of influence it does in this region. The current administration's actions in Venezuela, its rhetoric with countries like Colombia, Nicaragua, and Cuba is very clear on that. So when you look at DR in the middle of all of it, with a president here in the Dominican Republic who's clearly shown that they want to be all in on alignment with the United States, there's mutual benefit for both countries to have said alignment. I've said this before. The world serves a superpower. It always will. I know there's so much going on in the United States right now. I completely get it. But I would wonder how many people would prefer that DR serves China as the world superpower versus the US. Call it lesser of two evils, call it what you want. But I would much rather DR is aligned with the United States than serving the master of China. I think most of us would agree with that for the world, no matter the hype and all the other crazy stuff you see on social media. So the DR has made its choice, and I think it's the smart one. Let's contrast that with, say, Colombia. Petro, the president of Colombia, is not Maduro, he's not Cuba, they're not Nicaragua, none of that. However, he made an interesting decision recently that I think puts him on the wrong side of where he wants to be in the region. That summit of the Americas I mentioned, happening in Punta Cana, he decided he wasn't gonna come to it, which is fine. His reason being he doesn't like the idea of US sort of over-influence in the region. I completely understand that. But the bigger reason he said was because the summit was not inclusive specifically to Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. So the Colombian president is essentially saying, hey, I don't like how much influence the US is trying to exert in this region. And rather than diplomatically going to a summit where I can meet with US officials, maybe even Trump, have this conversation and lobby for alignment with my other peer nations. No. I'm gonna sit this one out in solidarity with Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. If I'm looking at which one I'd rather be DR, I'd rather align, I'd rather know where the administration is going, and say yes more than no. And to be clear, DR has said no. At the last Summit of the Americas, for instance, the Biden administration went around to all of the countries in the region and implored them to sign agreements essentially that they would take in asylum seekers across their border. The US's way of saying, hey, it can't just be us, we should all do it. Almost every country signed it. And to be honest with you, my take, almost every country knew that it wouldn't really matter because all these asylum seekers are gonna go to the US anyway. But one country didn't sign it. Dominican Republic. They stood in the face of the US, that pressure, and said, no, we're not gonna sign that. Why? Because they have their own border issue here with Haiti. If you agree to that, even if it's just symbolic and not actual law, you're essentially saying we will allow even more unchecked immigration at the border with Haiti. Something they're already battling with, something that's already existentially an issue for DR. So DR will say no. There's evidence of that. But where they've been saying yes is aligning with democratic values, aligning against Venezuela, support logistically, support militarily. My assessment is that's good business. It's almost like this, imagine Walmart has your product on the shelf and Walmart sells your product really well and you make a lot of money from Walmart. And then you decide, I'm gonna stiff arm you, Walmart. I might like Target better. Target wants in, they don't have as much distribution and the way they do business doesn't quite align with us, but I'd rather go with them maybe. I don't know, we'll see. Makes no sense. Walmart being the US here, and the product being the Dominican Republic. So for DR, they get the support of the biggest superpower in the world and the region. And for the United States, they get a reliable asset, a partner in what is now a shaky region. So what this likely means going forward for US-DR relations, I think there's deeper investment in the relationship. You're already seeing this when it comes to the logistics hubs being built, the Zona Franca relationship the US has with DR, the recent signing a year ago or so of the Open Skies Agreement, easier travel, easier coordination between countries, more nearshoring, more trade cooperation, increased support for things like expats, veterans, binational families living here in DR, and so on. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a healthy skepticism that should always remain about any country's intentions with another, meaning what does the US want with DR? Many will point to colonization, Puerto Rico, Hawaii. The difference though is DR is a sovereign country. Puerto Rico and Hawaii are American assets. A state in Hawaii, a territory in Puerto Rico. They have to abide by US law and they're subject to whatever's happening with the United States directly. DR isn't that. DR also is growing its middle class. It's growing its GDP per capita. Recently passing Mexico in GDP per capita from a purchasing power perspective, the PPP metric. Just Google that. While there's been a lot of symbolism that I talked at the jump of this video, now you're starting to see where there was symbolism to start, to solidify this relationship. Now we're going to see substance. That's how I see this path forward. Now, this topic we discussed inside my DR inner circle, and so many questions came from those folks. They actually helped shape how I'm thinking about this, shape the interaction I had with the ambassador. And after that meeting, I had a deeper conversation with them about the reality of where things are going forward, in my opinion. So I'm not hiding information here. I just want you to know that there is a place where we go deeper on these topics, a thriving community of amazing people that I really enjoy serving. In fact, the ambassador did indicate that she'd be willing to come on and do my Grow Up with Gruber series, which would be a public conversation with practical questions. And then the specific DR Inner Circle questions that I get, I'll be asking them separately and releasing them for those folks exclusively. So look, On the level, the relationship is evolving. The relationship is strengthening. Whether you like that or don't like that is not the point of this video. My goal isn't hype or politicization, or to politicize it. Sheesh. It's just to give you a sense of what's happening, why it matters, and where I see all of these things going forward. That said, how are you feeling? Drop it down in the comments below. I'm always curious to hear it. I always say attack the point, not the person. In fact, YouTube suppresses the attacks on the person because I have that standard in the comments. People think I delete stuff all the time. I don't. It just gets kicked out by YouTube if you're getting overly personal with other people. I love civility. Let's keep it that way in the comments below. You may or may not be convinced about how big a future the Dominican Republic has. I'll at least try to show you some of the options, like here in Santiago, Dominican Republic, an incredible city that I went to visit, tour, and showed a whole bunch of really interesting things happening in this very modern and insanely beautiful city. So you're gonna tap here next, watch that, and I'll see you on the next one.